You like to believe you're immune. That if you lived inside one of those stories, the stories where the protagonist turns rotten, you would never cross the line. You tell yourself, I could never become them. I would never do what they did. But what if the only thing that separates you from the monsters you despise is a choice you haven't been forced to make yet? There is a peculiar kind of literature that lures us into sympathy, then disgust. You start out rooting for a character, even loving them. But by the final page, you secretly loathe who they've become. Sometimes, you despise them so much, you want to throw the book across the room. But beneath that disgust, there's a shadow, a cold ripple of recognition. These stories do not just expose the darkness in their protagonists. They expose the darkness in us. The real question isn't, how did they become monsters? It's how easily could you? Let us peel back the curtain, not just on the characters, but on human psychology itself. Why do we watch a transformation from hero to villain with such fascination, then recoil in moral superiority at the end? Why do characters like Raskolnikov, Humbert, Jay Gatsby, or Amy Dunn both repel us and keep us compulsively turning the page? The answer is nothing short of terrifying. These stories reveal how thin the boundaries are between virtue and depravity. They whisper to us that, under just the right pressure, our own souls could fracture. Why does this happen? Stories of moral decay tap into what psychologists call the shadow self, the part of you that houses shame, envy, cruelty, and appetites you pretend don't exist. When a protagonist descends into darkness, your first instinct is denial. I'm not like that. But as the plot unfolds, something more dangerous unfolds with it, the sinking sense that their motivations are not foreign. In fact, they're agonizingly familiar. You notice the small, innocent rationalizations, the lies told for a good reason. You've whispered those same excuses to yourself. You watch a character betray their own values bit by bit, and part of you recognizes every decision, every moral shortcut. The moment when comfort becomes more important than conscience, when status or desire becomes irresistible, when loneliness is so overwhelming that morality becomes negotiable. This is the psychological trap. It feels safe to despise the villain so long as you believe they're nothing like you. But that contempt is itself a mask. It's a defense mechanism. Because to admit you understand them is to admit that you, too, are corruptible. Why do we fall for it? Why do good intentions curdle into something more sinister? The truth is, every single person is shaped by a hidden survival logic. You do things not because they're right, but because, at the time, they feel necessary. Isolation, humiliation, powerlessness, these are the ingredients. The world closes in, and the more cornered you feel, the easier it is to betray your own moral code. You watch a literary protagonist compromise one principle after another, and with each tiny act, they justify it to themselves, just this once. No one will know. I had no choice. But the real horror? You can trace the same pattern in your own life. Not murder, not madness, but all the small betrayals, the words you didn't say, the person you threw under the bus, the boundary you let slide. The comfort of self-deception is addicting. Even as you watch a fictional descent into villainy, a part of you is screaming, but I'm different. I would stop. Would you? What does this reveal about human nature? We like to believe in good and evil as fixed categories, but the truth is much more unstable. The brain is an expert at rationalization. The more threatened, isolated, or desperate you feel, the more your moral boundaries melt. Identity itself is negotiable. Today, you're the hero. Tomorrow, you're capable of almost anything. And our society rewards this fluidity. Charisma becomes a weapon. Intelligence can be wielded to justify ugliness. Sometimes, the very traits that make a protagonist compelling are the same ones that lead them astray. Ambition, charm, the hunger to be special. But there's another layer, even darker. We're drawn to these stories because they let us experience moral collapse safely, at a distance. You turn the page in horror, but you never put the book down. It's a rehearsal for your own darkness. The act of despising a villain feels good, because it's a relief. If you make them monsters, you never have to confront your reflection in them. You see, the real reason we love to hate these protagonists isn't about them at all. It's about our own hunger for moral purity. We purge ourselves through contempt. We cling to the illusion that goodness is a birthright, not a razor-thin, moment-by-moment choice. But what if the most dangerous truths are the ones we cannot bear to face? How many times have you watched someone else make a horrifying choice and told yourself, I would never? Yet studies show that under enough stress, hunger, shame, or loneliness, Almost anyone is capable of betrayal. Evil isn't always loud and monstrous. Often, it creeps in through exhaustion, envy, the desire to belong. Let us go deeper. We think of identity as solid. I am a good person. But identity is unstable. Humans are masters of doublethink. You can cheat and still call yourself honest. You can manipulate and still see yourself as kind. This is the true genius of the fall from grace narrative. It exposes our endless capacity for self-deception. The protagonist doesn't become a monster overnight. They slide, step by step, always finding a reason why the old rules don't apply this time. And perhaps that's what makes these stories so haunting. The audience is implicated, not excused. You read about another's corruption, but the book is holding up a mirror. What would you do with infinite power? What price would you pay for love, for revenge, for validation? How many boundaries would you erase before you admit you have none? The truly unsettling truth? The vast majority of our evil is unintentional. We stumble into it, calling ourselves good at every step. So, why do you despise the villain by the final page? Maybe because, in your secret heart, you know this. The only thing separating you from them is one decision, one moment, one slippery justification. The line is never as clear as you hope. The monsters you fear might just be wearing your face. The next time you clutch that book in horror at the protagonist's fall, ask yourself not, how could they? But how close am I? The answer might chill you more than any novel ever could. In the end, we're all one desperate moment away from becoming strangers to ourselves. Beware the comfort of contempt. The monster isn't out there. It's much, much closer.